growing up, there were not a lot of things in my house that if you turn the TV on, we all were going to flock together to go and watch. And yet, if like the Super Bowl was on, or especially if Florida State football was on, then we were gathered around the TV together, and it got a little rowdy at times. There would be shouts of joy, there would be cheers, there would be oohs and ahs, and some days, if things weren't going very well, then there would be a bunch of grumpy people sitting in the room, not just then, but afterwards, as we kind of carried that with us into the rest of the day. My house is very different now. I can turn it on, and if that is on the TV, I'm going to empty the room. Sure, I've got family that'll support my teams with a shirt. They'll ask how the game is going and maybe give a little woohoo. But if I really want to get into that same kind of, like, we're watching and we're invested in what's happening and we care about it a bunch, I got to go to a group text with my brothers and my dad to be able to do that. It's just not the same. And when I'm sitting there, sometimes it can feel lonely or frustrating. And if the game is really good, I'm like, how can you not care about this as much as me? And it feels crazy that people don't care like I do. Now, if it feels that way about something that is completely insignificant in the grand scheme of things, just imagine how it feels when you get to significant things. But some of you are living that every single day. You care more than someone else. You see your friends and your family, they're suffering, they're lost, they're hurt, and you want to see healing come. You want to see it come spiritually, physically, emotionally. It doesn't matter. There is just brokenness in the people that you love, and you want to see that miraculously taken care of. But for whatever reason, the people that you see that in, that you care about, they don't see the need, or they don't have enough faith that something can ever be better than it is right now. And so you end up caring more about healing the brokenness than they do. I'm using faith in a specific way when I talk about this situation, right? See, faith, when we talk about it in terms of God and our understanding of Him, it's not simply having like right beliefs. Faith is trust plus action. Faith comes to the rope bridge that goes between two mountains in the Andes with a nice chasm that drops hundreds of feet in between, and says, yes, there's 3 ropes here, and I can hold on with my hands on the two on the side and use my feet to kind of balance and go across the middle. And I know that it can do that, but knowing it isn't enough. I have to have faith in it. I have to trust that it will hold me, and then that has to move me to actually act on that trust and walk across the bridge to the other side. Otherwise, I remain stuck where I am because of my lack of faith. When we don't have faith, we end up where we are, and it's not going to get any better. So without faith, I don't fight the addiction anymore. It gets to have me. Without faith, I stop looking for a new job because this is the best I can have, no matter how abusive the situation, no matter how toxic the environment. Without faith, my PT stops. If I go, I half-heartedly try the exercises they're asking for because nothing is going to get better. Without faith, I give up on my marriage. I give up on my kids. Without faith, I just cocoon away in my anxiety because it never relents and it's never going to. And if you have people who are suffering from those kinds of situations and more, that have no faith that things can be better than they are right now, but you do, how does it feel? Probably feel like I do watching the game. Alone and frustrated and confused as to why they don't care like you do. And you look at it, maybe you should give up too. Maybe this is all there is ever going to be in this place. And you're looking, instead of pushing forward, which is going to be sometimes dangerous and always uncomfortable, maybe you're looking for something that brings you a little comfort. Maybe you're so worried like they are that if you keep going, all you're going to find is disappointment. That it's easier to find some place to just find some comfort and some relief, even if that relief is temporary. There's a town that shows up a lot in the New Testament. It's in Galilee. It's up on the Sea of Galilee, up on the north side of it, and it's a town by the name of Capernaum, which literally means the city of comfort. This was a place that Jesus made as his home base during his time of ministry. It was a little fishing village. Well, little in our eyes, probably big for the day, but it was a fishing village and a trade center because it was on the road between Damascus and Egypt. And so a lot of people would pass through there. It was kind of a melting pot. And in the middle of this city, they had a religious center that was very influential. It also happened to be the home of Peter and Andrew, James and John, some of Jesus' first and most famous disciples. And this was the place that he had chosen to kind of live in as he's doing his ministry on earth. He had a bit of celebrity status in town. There was a time very recently when he had come through and was there, and he was with Peter, and Peter's mother-in-law had a fever, so he went and he healed Peter's mother-in-law. And then as the Sabbath broke that sundown, he ended up staying up all night as people from all over town and all over the area brought everyone who was sick and diseased and demon-possessed, and he healed them, and he exorcised the demons, and he cast all of that away. And every time he came back to town then, he started to draw crowds because this was the man that had healed all their diseases and cast out all their demons. And so he came back home one day, and there was a crowd that gathered, and this crowd overflowed. I mean, the house was full, the yard was full, all around. You could not get close enough to him because everyone wanted to hear what he had to say. Because unlike these other teachers that they were used to from this influential place, he spoke as one who had authority. He spoke literally the words of life to them. And it was one of these times, as everyone was gathered around, that this situation happened. It said, some men came, bringing to him a paralytic, carried by 4 of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus, and after digging through it, lowered the mat the paralyzed man was lying on. When you read this by itself, you kind of get some pictures, but what I want to know is, why wasn't this man healed already? His paralysis was not a new thing. He may have probably had it from birth, if not for a long time. And Jesus had already done this heal-a-thon not that long ago that took care of all of the other sicknesses and diseases that were taking place in Capernaum. I mean, Capernaum keeps popping up a lot after this in the story. But the only other healings you hear about are death-related ones, like people about to die or people that were already dead that Jesus resurrected. So why did this man not get healed when everybody else had? I wonder if it was because when that was going on, he didn't have any faith. He just didn't care anymore. He was just kind of resigned that this was as good as it was going to get. He might not get his hopes up. He doesn't need to look for anything else. He doesn't need to do anything else because all that's waiting for him if he does that is disappointed. At least if he knows he's stuck, he can't be disappointed anymore. So Jesus heals, but he doesn't heal him. So why go through the trouble of trying to get to him? It was better just to lay on the ground where he was stuck. And yet there are at least 4 people in that town that cared more about this man's brokenness than he did. And I imagine they feel like most of us feel that are dealing with that same situation today. Maybe a little bit frustrated, maybe a little bit confused, probably a lot heartbroken that someone they love is going through this and does not believe it will ever get better. But they were not ready to let the brokenness win. Their faith moved them to action. And they were willing to confront any of the obstacles that might possibly get in the way. Like they literally had to come and carry this man to Jesus. That's a big obstacle. And they couldn't just do it in a straight line or on a clear road. They had to try and maneuver through this crowd of people. I mean, it's hard enough to get one person through a crowd if you've been like at Disney World or Times Square, one of those places where you're just kind of an airport at rush hour times. You're just trying to work your way through the crowd, and sometimes you just can't do it by yourself. Now imagine trying to do it with 3 other people helping you carry a 5th person. It's ridiculous to try and get through. And it would be something that a lot of us would just give up and we're like, nope, I'm not dealing with this today. We'll try another time. I mean, I've got some experience with what that feels like to do. And it's not an easy thing. But I have a friend, Daniel. He's a little bit younger than I was. And in high school, we would often take our youth group to go to amusement parks and try different things and travel around over the summer. And we had gone to one. He was with us. And we found out that he had never ridden a roller coaster before. And we're like, okay, today is the day for you. Because we cared about him. We knew he would love it if he just tried it. And so he was so terrified, though, that here we are. There's about 3 or 4 of us. And we are reenacting this scene in the crowded line to get on the roller coaster. We have got him. We're carrying him, literally, as he's crying, as he's shaking, as he does not want to be there. He was so scared of what might happen that he would rather not try and see the good that can come out of it too. All he could see was the fear and the disappointment and the what if this doesn't work out. He had no chance of seeing what if it does work. What if this is the greatest thing I've ever done? What if I love going fast and upside down? And so, for whatever reason, the workers actually let us do this. We just kept carrying him until we finally got up to the front and we were able to put him in the thing and strap him in before we strapped ourselves in to let him ride this thing. And when we got off the ride, he was still crying and he still was holding on to us, but they had turned from fear to tears of joy, and instead of shaking to get away, it was hugs, thanking us for getting him on this ride. Now, we don't know what's going to happen yet with this guy. But we know that he's had to get through some obstacles just to get to the point where he's close to Jesus, but not close enough to Jesus yet. They can't get through the crowd. And so somehow, they're able to get him up on top of the roof of the building that Jesus is on. I don't know how they did it, if they had ladders, if they brought ropes, whatever they did. They get him up on top of the roof, then they get up on the roof, and then they start to dig while they're up there. And what they're digging through isn't the easiest thing to dig through. I mean, here were some timbers, and then they put some thatching, and then they would cover that with this mud and straw and manure mixture. I mean, think about this for a second. That is literally what's up on top of their roof. And every time that it rained, they would kind of come and roll it and pack it down so it would get harder and harder over time. And here they are with whatever they have, probably their fingers at some point, digging into this mud and manure and straw mixture, hurting themselves. They're probably dirty, underneath your fingernails. You've got all that stuff trapped. I'm sure there's some blood involved because of their sharp edges from weird stuff, but they don't care. They're continuing to dig because whatever they have to go through to get this person they love to Jesus is worth it. They care more than him, and they aren't going to stop because their faith says it is going to be worth it if we can just get him and Jesus face to face. So they are opening up the roof. They're tearing it back with their bare hands, and they finally lower him down in front of Jesus. And in response, Jesus does something miraculous. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Son, your sins are forgiven." The wild thing in that to me isn't what Jesus did for the man. It's why he did it. It wasn't the paralyzed man's faith that led to his own healing. It was the faith of his friends. Caring more than the person you care for sets them up for a miracle. Let me say that again. Caring for the person you care for, caring more than they care, can set them up for a miracle. It's amazing what God has entrusted to those of us who know him and love him for the people around us who are suffering and hurting in their brokenness. And Jesus jumped right over him being paralyzed to the deepest need that he has. The ability to be forgiven so that he can be made right between him and God, with others, with himself, with all of creation. And yet not everyone's happy about this. The way that Jesus is going about this, the forgiveness that he's offering, doesn't fit with how the religious leaders believe things should look. So to silence those religious teachers, to reveal the power and authority of God, and to help the man claim the faith that his friends had offered to him for himself, Jesus gives the guy some instructions. Which is easier to say to this paralytic? Your sins are forgiven? Or to say, get up, take your mat, and walk? But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins, he said to the paralytic, I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home. He got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of them all. And this amazed everyone. And they praised God, saying, we have never seen anything like this. Jesus' instructions to the man were a call to act out his faith. Faith that he hadn't had, but his friends had demonstrated to him. Faith that required him to trust Jesus and take action. This man, as far as we know, had never gotten up before. He had never walked before. He had never carried his mat before. And here Jesus is saying, get up, take your mat, and walk out and go home. And he hadn't done anything to the man yet other than forgive him that would call for him to trust him. But he trusted him enough that he did exactly what Jesus asked. And it couldn't help it. Everyone around who saw that praised God because they had never seen anything like that before. Those of you who care more than someone else does who you care for, keep bringing them to Jesus. You are set to see things you have never seen before because the authority of Jesus will be displayed in that place. May your faith enable you to face the obstacles that are getting in the way. Drag people to Jesus, literally and figuratively. Be creative. Get into the dirt and the manure. Let it get under your nails. Make it worth it, because when you are face to face with those you love and with Jesus, things happen. Before moving to West Point, I worked in Kansas City at an inner city mission complex, and it was there that I met Tom and Lynn. Now, Tom and Lynn had been hopeless. They got hooked on some pain medication. And that addiction broke everything in their lives. Because of it, they lost their job. It took all of their money and their finances. They finally reached a point where things were so bad at home that Tom's mom came and took their kids away from them to keep them safe. And in the result of doing that, there was so much yelling and hatred and anger for Tom towards his mom that he was convinced that that was going to end that relationship forever. And he found him and his wife on the streets with nothing. And for about 2 years, they just bounced from jail back to the street, back to the jail, back to the street. And they had resigned themselves that eventually they were just going to die in one of those two places. But Tom's mother and their kids had faith that they didn't have. They didn't believe, Tom and Lynn didn't believe their life was ever going to get better, but his mother and their kids would not let that be the case. They cried and they prayed for them every day. She even went looking for them out on the streets, and while she never was able to find them, she did strike up a relationship with a cop and let him know kind of the situation. Said, hey, if you ever run into Tom or Lynn, please give them some help instead of sending them to jail. And so one time, while they were out looking for something to give them a little bit of a hit, before they got to that point, this very cop ran into them and was able to send them to the rescue mission. Mom doesn't know they're there. They don't know Mom was the one who helped get them there. But while they're there, they start to have a change of heart. And Mom and their kids just keep praying. Somehow, through a turn of events that seems random, but we know isn't, Tom and Lynn were fast-tracked into a program that was there, a residence program. That was where I was. That's where I met them. And this program was designed to help them get healthy and to help them build stable lives with a job and steady income and healed relationships and eventually getting their own place to live again. And you go through this, it's pretty intense. It takes months to go through. You don't just get in and out in a couple of weeks. And they were going through this, and you could see them growing. You could see them healing. You could see them starting to figure things out. And yet they still believed, because they had lost track of the rest of their family, that a reconciliation was never going to happen. And yet Mom kept praying. Mom kept praying and looking for them so much that eventually she got word that they were at this mission. But she wasn't allowed to reach out and talk to them because that wasn't allowed at this point in the process. In fact, you had to get close to the end of the program until visitors and family were allowed to come and make contact with you again and go through those things. And so Mom found out about that. And she and the kids made plans to come that very day. Tom and Lynn weren't expecting that. In fact, they were kind of not looking forward to that because they didn't think they had anyone who would ever want to come and be with them. Even though they'd made this much progress, their life had been such a mess that this was the best that they could expect, right? And so they kind of had gone to hide in their room while everything else was going on in the main area, when suddenly Mom and kids show up. And after 3 years, they are reunited. And the look on Tom's face, and the look on Lynn's face, and the tears that were shed, not just by them, but by everyone else in the room, there was no way that we couldn't leave that place saying, we have never seen anything like this. Look what God has done. I have no idea how it will work out in the situations for the people that you're praying for, but I know this. When the people that you love don't have faith, don't give up your own. Lend it to them. Put your faith into action. Use it so that you keep putting the brokenness in their lives before the throne of grace until they are face to face with Jesus. And then see what He can do for them. And so as I pray here in a second, if you have someone on your heart that they have given up, but you haven't, I want you to pray for them this time. Heavenly Father, I'm so grateful that you are a God who responds to faith. You enable us to act, and you are a God who is trustworthy enough that we can come to you. And I pray that you would help us to not give up hope, but to keep trying. When obstacles get in our way, when the people that we care about don't care as much as us about their brokenness, Don't let us think it's normal. Don't let us think this is all there is. Don't let us be scared of disappointment or being let down, but keep us moving them towards you, pointing them towards you, praying for them before you, knowing that you have the authority to forgive sins, to restore lives, to heal broken hearts, to mend broken bodies, and to reclaim broken families and broken relationships by the power of your Spirit. Help us to keep pressing forward, trusting in your promises, and knowing that when we care more than somebody else, we are set up in the perfect place to see a miracle from you that can astound all of us. Lord, we are believing that we will see some of those in our lives. I pray this in your name. Amen.